Just before I hit record today on the Cupra Born video, some people have walked by and like, what is that? It's gorgeous. And I say, it's Cupra. And they go, and I say, Seat. All right. I said, owned by Volkswagen. Ah, getcha. And then someone else thought it was a Tesla. Anyway, welcome to Nobby on Cars. Welcome to the Cupra Born. I have had this car, not this exact car, but the Born earlier on in the year when we had the left-hand drive first look in Dublin. But I've been driving for a week. And the question you're going to want to know is, would I have one over an ID.3? And we'll get to that. But it is very, very eye-catching. So there's a couple of options on this car. The Alloys 20s, they're over €1,000 option. Aurora Blue is the colour, it's about 900 quid. The bucket seats are about €1,200. That's a copper flex in them though. And they've done enough to the car to differentiate it between this and an ID.3. In fact, my dad is waiting on an ID.3 for about 9 months. And I said to him, this is basically an ID.3 in a different coat. Oh, really? So, yes, the little pattern over the rear quarter, fair enough, that will kind of give the game away, and the side profile a little bit as well. But the copper on the front of the car, the Cupra badge, the LED lights, the little grooves here in the bonnet, they've done enough to make it just that little bit different, I think. Total ID.3 vibes now on the side, I'm sure you agree. Although different, if you get those alloys, a little bit of rim protection on them, just the roof, and again that rear quarter, total Volkswagen vibes. But the side skirts along here really add something to the car. In fact, have Cupra managed to get a hot hatch look of a car going on here? I think they have. Teenagers, young fellas don't look at cars very often these days, I've noticed. But the amount of times this week I've been driving by a school or after 4 o'clock, whatever, and there's teenagers doing double takes at it. It's got a lot of views on TikTok. There's something going on with this car for younger generations. So Cupra have obviously just done their research there about trying to get people of that age interested in their brand, and guys and girls a little bit older as well. Just over €38,000 is the price of the Cupra Born, by the way. This particular car is into the early 40s when you add in the wheels, the seat, some safety packs, massive big strip. It comes on with your dipped headlights. It's not on during your daytime running lights. Cupra badge in the copper as well. Little kind of spoiler, shark finny bits down here, and nice big spoiler as well. Boot is 385 litres, which is grand. It's nothing exceptional. Big dirty lip here, but a dog box standard, medium-sized dog will fit in here. There is actually a bit of space down below for your charging cables. You'll get a little bag for them. The Type 2 cable is actually at home in my house, so I don't have it on me, but that's the boot. It's kind of simple enough, couple of shopping hooks and whatever, and away you go. And it's a manual tailgate, which is quite light. So your CCS charging port is here. It'll also do 11 kilowatt charging where available, and you'll charge it in 6 hours to full if you're using 11 kilowatts. If you find anything fast like an Ionity, it'll do 100 kilowatt charging as standard, up to 125 on higher spec models. And I did use Ionity today. 5 minutes cost €5 because I was paying the full rate, so it's not particularly cheap. Now the range in the car, because this is the 58 kilowatt hour battery version, Cupra claim on their sheet here 417 kilometers. I started this car today full charge at about 280. Now temperature wise about 14 degrees, there's loads of variables, but 417 seems quite optimistic. Rear space, positives, good room for knees. Not so much for feet if the driver's seat, and in these upgraded bucket style seats, they're electrically operated. They're slammed to the ground, a little bit harder. Storage down here for things, and there's not a huge amount of thigh support. The backs of your thighs on this rear bench. 2 USB-C charging ports, that's also good. There's no air vents, however. Any air is just coming from the front of the car. Head height is pretty good. It does curve in a little bit at the edge here, but I think most people would get by okay. And you get an armrest in the back of your Cupra Born, and there's continued copper flex on these upgraded seats, and they're very small, but you can just see the little Cupra part of the logo design here. Just a reminder that we are fully independent on Nobby on Cars here on YouTube. If you want to support us, there's links below, including Patreon. For the price of a coffee every month, one coffee for 1 month, you'd help us to be able to continue to make these fully independent reviews. What can I say about a Cupra steering wheel? I love them. And apart from maybe the lost opportunity, the bit more copper down here, steering wheel is pretty gorgeous, perforated, it's heated, as are the seats. If you don't know by now, a little hack for you, double tap on your climate control buttons and you'll put the heated seats on for either driver and passenger. Tap them again and they'll reduce in the heat intensity. I remember with the pre-production cars, Cupra mentioned that this sliding cover was going to be as standard in the car. It is, and it's great. If you're not in the mood for looking at cups and cup holders and keys and rubbish, you can tuck everything away down here. Armrest equally, loads of space. Unfortunately, it doesn't adjust in heights, but it does this way. Your charging is here. Charging I find is a bit hit and miss. Sometimes, depending on what angle it's touching on, exactly your wireless charger will work or not. The buttons, the haptic buttons, I'm really, in some ways, I don't mind them. In other ways, it's like, just increase the volume. And equally, if you're trying to set up your radar guided cruise control, that can be a bit hit and miss. I don't know. Sometimes I'm okay with them. So it's a bit of a love-hate relationship with me and the buttons in all the Volkswagen Group cars. You can time your climate control to be on in the mornings, time your heating, get your... look, this system I think works a little bit better than Volkswagen. I think there's more in it. And it's more colourful and yeah, it's the same essential screen and everything. But just the whole vibe of the interior, it's just a bit more special. And I don't know if the plastics in general are any better quality, but there's enough things here to kind of distract you from it. And there's flashes of silver and copper again, and just the copper up the angled centerpiece here. It just all works. And it does feel like a slightly more special place to sit than the ID.3. We've got 204 brake horsepower on tap. It's rear wheel drive, loads of torque, a little over 7 seconds to 60. And it's as always, going to be quick in a straight line. The thing about the Cupra, and I know they'll say it's the same setup as the ID.3, but there's a sport suspension as standard in this car. It sits lower than the ID.3. And I just think this car wants to be driven just that little more enthusiastically than the ID.3. There's just something in it. Even the steering, it's direct. I mean, a lot of electric cars, you kind of feel the weight of them and it can affect the handling. This thing is still very, very sharp. Even on the 20-inch alloys, I'm not saying you don't feel bumps, you do, but it's reasonably acceptable. The trade-off of the car looking so cool isn't severely impacted by the rubber on the ground quantity. And it's just a bit more engaging to drive. Now, it doesn't have the dynamic chassis control that a lot of Cupras I've tested have. That would make it very, very interesting. And it's, yeah, it would be lovely to be able to just individually tailor it a little bit more. Now, there are profiles as standard. There's a lot of good stuff as standard in the car. Heated steering wheel is standard. Heated seats are standard. The sport suspension, as I mentioned. 18-inch alloys are a standard. You get reversing cameras as standard. Little things that sometimes in a Volkswagen Polo you mightn't get. In a Golf you mightn't get in some cases. So there's a lot of kit that comes for your price. Like here's a corner that I really haven't taken any attempt to slow down for, and it just nails it. So it is the more engaged car to drive in my opinion. That big pillar thing still bothers me. Same thing in the ID.3. It's a huge space, and it's a little bit of a blind spot. Speaking of which, you don't get blind spot as standard. That is one thing the car doesn't have. And again, for the price, you kind of might want to see that just blinking away there in your mirror. It would make life easier anyway. But if you're thinking about going Cupra versus ID.3 and you are someone who enjoys driving, that is something I definitely bear in mind. It's not light years ahead, don't get me wrong, but it is just that little bit sharper to drive. And I felt that the first time I drove the car, and after spending now a week with it, in fact just over a week because it's a bank holiday, I'm fully convinced. And there is a good little burst of power there when you do squeeze the throttle to the floor. There is a sport mode. Really what big difference it does, I'm not totally convinced of that either. It drops your range by about 3 kilometers, I know that much. But the tail nearly got a bit happy there. And I've driven this exact road in some serious cars, M3s, Golf Rs, you name it. These are one of the best roads that I'll test a car on, and I can't say that this feels any less involved and any slower than some of the best of them. Obviously there's your limitations in how fast you can go on a road, but I love the automatic regen braking. That just, if you're not too bothered about coming up to a corner and slamming on, it'll generally do the work for you. It's all good. I have had it's version 3 software for those who are really quite technical. Some people are like, what? If you are interested, it's version 3. It's still doing things like driving the centre of the road the odd time, but generally it's been glitch free. There's also an augmented heads-up display in this car, and it's wonderful. It'll put it in an orange strip if it's telling you you're crossing over a line. It'll do your nav. It'll tell you if you're getting close to somebody on a motorway. It's really intuitive. I love it. It is an expensive enough optional extra. In fact, it's €956, so you may not think it's worth it. But it's one of those things, if you try it, very hard then to go back. Let's just try a little bend here again. A bit more braking action this time. You do, at the very limit now of it, you do feel, oh, there's a little bit of weight there, all right. But it's still pretty good. I've driven a lot of electric cars, and this thing handles pretty well. Main question is, would I buy one over an ID.3? Well, just because it looks a bit different, because it looks sportier, it drives ever so slightly better. If I was in the market for a hatch, an electric one at that, I think I would pick the Born over the ID.3, just for the cool factor. ID.3 is a really successful car, does exactly what it says in the tin. I just want something a little more exclusive, and I think in the Born, you're gonna get it. Thanks very much for watching. See you in the next one.